Well, we all woke up to some big story happening somewhere, but it has a lot of impact on us. You know what? Ghana is not immune from shocks of global event, and as a feud between Israel and Iran intensifies amid the trading of missiles and evacuations, the more alarming it becomes with all the potential to undo the gains made. Today, the dollar is what? Someone spoke to me this morning and said, I'm getting the dollar for 10 point something. But if we are not careful, this will erode those gains. We look at the various strands of this war and what the nation should be doing to contain and mitigate its impact. And you know what? Lead researcher here and our lead data analyst, Isaac Ofieje, is ready to help you understand why this war is happening far away from us, but is so close to home. Kofi?
Joe and Sweetie, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, another geopolitical bell has been rung, and Ghana finds itself in that mix again.
And you're here to help us understand.
Absolutely. And you remember the Russia-Ukraine templates, and we suffered a lot as a result of that conflict, which is still ongoing, but there's a new addition, a new kid on the block, which is Iran and Israel. And let's try and analyze why this is important. It's not just about Israel and Iran. It's about the Middle East belt, which is a key player when we talk about oil and the energy sector. Why? Because if you're talking about the original members of OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, it's actually in the Middle East. Iran is part of it. You have Iraq also being part of it. And just this morning, we understand, reports shows that even Palestine has been hit by some of the missiles. About 80 missiles have actually gone to the Palestinian region. And that's why we are analyzing that what could this be in terms of the threat to Ghana's energy sector. We began this year with a very big hope, and the hope is that we were hoping that crude oil prices, Brent crude oil prices, were going to stay at a stable rate, and that was really going to help us at the pumps. And we know that even with the introduction of that 1 cedi additional levy on the export price of fuel, the main factor was that crude prices were stable on the international market, and the fact that the cedi had actually gained value also against major trading currencies like the greenback or the dollar. But there is a new geopolitical shift, and we are analyzing whether the kind of domestic buffers we've built so far will be able to sustain the cedi and then also sustain the country's energy sector.
Well, Joe, that's Isaac, that's a very good question. We have a comprehensive report, very short, that will set the tone for the analysis you're about to give us. So let's circle back and go to the report, and we'll return to
Despite the work we have done, Ghana is not immune from the shocks of global events. Recent events in the Middle East, which involve an exchange of missiles between Israel and Iran, have started to escalate crude oil prices dramatically. I've asked our Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy to keep a close eye on the development and model the possible impacts on our petroleum prices and prepare measures to protect the recent gains that we have made.
So that's the president speaking on the very issue. But Kofi, that's what he has to say. Over to you.
So, I mean, this is what we have on the smart war. You can see how crude prices have actually fared since the war began. We are looking at it in a span of 1 week, how crude prices have fared on the international market. You could see that just after Israel actually hit Iran with that big missile, what you see is that prices rose as high as more than $75 per barrel. We began the year in the region of the 60s. Now we are talking about the 70s. But the interesting thing is that, I mean, as days went by and all of that, what we are seeing is that prices are beginning to drop from the 75. Now we are talking about somewhere 71. So this was the peak when the war actually began on the 13th. We went very high. And analysts were actually projecting that if you look at this kind of trajectory, it could hurt global energy. But one thing that we are seeing is that big, trending downwards in terms of that 75 region. We're not talking about 71. It's a big improvement. if you compare it to when the war actually started. And if you actually open this up and bring in the context of Russia and Ukraine tension, this is the Russia and Ukraine war, this is the region, and you compare it to what we're experiencing right now, what you see is this big gap between how far oil prices went when Russia-Ukraine tension actually started, where we went above $100 per barrel. We're still within the 70s, even though it's too early to predict where it will be, but most of the big platforms are actually projecting that we could stay within 75 for the rest of the year, and that could be the average, which that means is that we will not be able to possibly reach the highs of the $100 per barrel that we experienced when Russia went against Ukraine, and then the reverse also came through. But, I mean, the big question is, where will Ghana actually be in all of this? Why? Because this is an economy that is trying to move away from dollars to building or backing the economy with gold. And we have actually said that when there is demand for, or when crude prices become expensive, crude prices always move with the dollar. So when there is demand for the crude oil or crude prices become expensive, it means now you need more dollars to exchange for this, to buy crude, which means if you have dollars or you're importing crude, you need more dollars to buy. So demand for dollars will go up. And if demand for dollars goes up, that means that dollar will begin to gain value, and people or investors will be looking at other means of investment. And one thing we've realized is that gold prices have actually really gone up. If you look at this chart, where it has gone up by more than, if you look at the current trend, is more than $3,000 dollars per ounce. And that means that, just look at it, Kojo and Sweetie, when the war actually started, just look at where, how prices of crude went as high as $75 per barrel. And just after, or just when the war broke between Iran and Israel, what you see is that gold prices begins to drop. So you see that big drop. So you see this is how gold prices were going up beginning of the year. If you look at it, beginning of the year, you see prices going up, hitting more than $3,400 per ounce. Now you see that peak here, and a significant, decline. As a result, or one of the big factors many are saying is that now some investors are looking at the dollar as a safe haven. But what we've seen during
it's rising again, right?
It's rising again, but marginal.
Okay.
But, I mean, this chart will tell you, the proper story where you see a big rise in the price of gold, and just when Israel decides to go against Iran, what you see when the war started, that gold prices begin to go down. Why? Because analysts have said that some, investors are beginning to look at the dollar as a safe haven when people are now not considering gold anymore.
Okay.
But if you compare this to what happened when the Russia-Ukraine war started, the jump is not that big. So many have said that, okay, then that could mean that many are still not seeing the dollar as a safe haven. When the dollar is really up, what happens is that for countries like Ghana that imports almost all of its refined crude, and we spend on average about $400 million to import refined crude into the country, we suffer. Why? Because there's a netted effect here where Ghana is also an exporter of crude, which means that when crude prices rise, Ghana will benefit. But on the other side, we will spend more to actually bring in refined crude, where we spend close to about $400 million every month we import crude. And the warning is that we may see prices go up in the next window if nothing is done about it. And we are understanding, or we are learning that even with the implementation of that 1 cedi addition on the export price of fuel, it's simply because of some of these global shifts where uncertainties are so high to the extent that government is rethinking a decision to implement. We understand there's also the GRA segment and all of that, but government is really considering not implementing this now because they know, looking ahead into the other pricing windows, energy may actually have a hike in terms of its price. And so it will be good to actually pause and look at what is going to happen in the international space and all of that. The other strand is that once crude moves with the dollar, and I was looking at the dollar index, and for the first time after the war, we are seeing the dollar index actually rising, which means people are beginning to still see the dollar as a safe haven. That will make demand for dollars go up. The big question is, do we have enough local buffers to actually withstand this geopolitical shock that we're experiencing at the moment? So we've been trying to look at, even how the cedi has been performing against the dollar. And the good news is that although we've had close to about 5 days of the war between Iran and Israel, what we have seen the cedi doing so well is that it has actually stabilized. And we are not seeing that kind of discrete, depreciation we saw when Russia and Ukraine war came in the picture. This time around is different. Why? Because government has explained that they have enough local buffers. So you look at the Gold Board initiative where government says it's now exporting, gold by itself and getting the inflows to back the cedi. You also look at remittance space, which has been closed, and according to government, they are getting so much from that space to actually help close the demand and supply gap. But the big question is, this is an economy that wants to practice a 24-hour economy that will heavily depend on stable power. And we understand that even if you come to the energy sector, there is that $3.1 billion debt that government is trying to clear. And one major reason why we are seeing a new levy even on fuel is because government wants to get dedicated funding to buy liquefied fuel to actually or fuel to power the thermal plant. But the big question is the pumps. What will be the story going forward? We've seen the windfalls where at the beginning of the year, we've actually seen prices come down to as low as 12 cedis. And so consumers have a cushion of some 3 cedis or 4 cedis. The big question is, with these huge windfalls that consumers have actually enjoyed in the last 2 months, will this war reverse the kind of windfall they have actually enjoyed? And will this be that factor that will prevent government from implementing that 1 cedi additional tax on the export price of fuel? It's still early days yet, but the good news is that prices of crude rose as high as $75 per barrel. But today, or this morning, per the data that we have checked, prices are coming down. And the only bad news for government is that this is an economy which is going to be backed by gold, and we are seeing gold prices also dropping. Will it drop to a level that will make implementation of the Gold Board initiative struggle a bit? But the good news is that so far, local or domestic buffers have been able to still keep prices at the pump very stable and the cedi also stable. So one thing we are so sure, maybe at this early stage, is that prices at the pumps are staying stable. But the projection is that if this war continues, and looking at maybe the tension or the temperature in the Middle East, because it's just about Israel and Iran, it's the entire Middle East and the big route for exports of petroleum products. How will all of this pan out? Ghana is still watching. And the reason why we are so important in how this war will travel is that we are even the chair of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We actually chairing that committee, and that 35-member committee that voted with Ghana abstaining and Israel saying that we are even disappointed. Okay. You need to change your stance at the moment. It's a big dilemma for the country at the moment, and that geopolitical shifts we are seeing, what will it be? What would the impact be on the country's energy sector, which has actually enjoyed some sort of stability since the beginning of the year, Kojo? Grateful
to you, Isaac Kofi Adjei, there with that analysis there. Let's bring in former Minister for Power, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who's joining us via phone here. Doc, we are grateful that you could find time to join us here. If you look at what is happening on the international front, what do you think will be the impact on our power sector? Okay, we'll bring him in. Exactly, yeah. But Kofi Adjei is still here. We'll still be analyzing what is happening in Iran and between Iran and Israel will affect us. But yeah, that was a great analysis there. how an economy that is to be backed by gold, in the face of all of this confusion that will impact oil prices, the gold price is also falling. So really, where will be our refuge? Do we know?
Well, I mean, for now, government is still banging its hopes on the Gold Board initiative because they still believe that gold prices will remain at fair value.
All right. I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Dr. Kwabena Donkor. Doc, grateful to you and thanks for joining us here. Now, if you look at our energy sector and are reliant on import of fuel to power the thermal plant, what could possibly be the impact of what is happening between Israel and Iran on our power sector? Do you have Dr. Kwabena Donkor?
I don't think we have Dr. Kwabena Donkor with us. He's former Minister of Power. Doc, if you can hear us, let's test your microphone. Good morning, sir. Okay, that's not a good sound.
Quite a difficult time.
But
we'll try and get him because we need to understand how this impacted, you know. But if you look at our energy mix, for example, as of 2002, our energy supplied from oil sources made up the largest proportion of energy supply with a contribution of about 33.4%, while that of natural gas and hydro stood at 28.2 and 5.7 respectively. This is what makes what is happening critical for us.
Exactly, where our current energy mix depends about 70% thermal. That means that at every point in time, you need to rely on crude prices, whether it is refined or in its raw state. When some of these things are happening, the prices will go up. You heard from the energy minister, Sweetie, who said that you need in excess of $1 billion this year to even buy fuel to power the thermal plant. We are still battling that 3.1 billion energy sector, debt at the moment. And then even if you look at excess capacity or in terms of the shortfalls that government has to cough up this year to pay, it's in excess of 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. On top of this, you're not just looking at the energy sector, you're also looking at the revenue you get from the energy sector. For Nigeria, for instance, this is bad news, but good news for Nigeria because Nigeria has been waiting for crude prices to go up for a long time. And for the first time this year, we are seeing crude prices rise above 70.
We don't want to lose the former minister. He just joined us again. So, Kojo, if you want to try again.
Doc, thank you. We want to understand what the impact of what's happening between Israel and Iran can have on the power sector of Ghana.
Well, not just on the power sector, on the energy sector, including petroleum. Oil is largely dependent on geopolitical happenings. And this is a typical example. It is not unexpected. And for most countries, in planning, you plan for the unexpected. Because oil goes with geopolitical things. Oil, it drives confidence. So any potential to disrupt the supply brings its own issue. For example, I cross-check. Spot Brent is trading around 24 cents a moment ago.
Doc, you're making a very solid point, but your line keeps breaking. I don't know if you can reposition yourself a bit for us. We'll be grateful.
Yeah, well, I've been... Okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, let's give it a try. Yeah. So you're making a point there.
Yeah. I was thinking that in terms of oil, these upheavals are expected. The most important thing is how we as a people will prepare for these upheavals. Dated Brent was at about $72. Spot Brent is about $74.24 a while ago. Anytime there are these upheavals, prices will rise and then find their own level when people assess the quantum of the upheaval. Fortunately, the Israeli-Iran war, or at least what is happening, will not have that major impact, in that there is only one supplier involved, that is Iran. And then the other thing is the Strait of Hormuz, what happens there. But there are enough stocks around the globe to make up for any loss of supply.
Okay.
Having said that, there will still be an impact. For Ghana, we are fortunate that the CD is stabilized. If I take from what the president said, that having spoken to both the finance minister and the governor, he thinks the CD will hover around 10 to 12 CDs to the dollar. Mm-hmm. If that actually stays, it gives us some stable platform to plan. When prices go out of the roof, assuming prices get to $80, then we will have to take a second look at our efficiency. Then the state may decide to forgo some temporary revenue or cross-subsidize some temporary revenue. For example, the Ghanaian state is losing huge revenues on MGO, marine gas oil, domestic. The gap between that and regular gas oil in terms of price is over 2 cedis a liter. The differential, and we know that that differential is largely abused. So the state can close that gap and make it some other revenue. Then the same applies to premixed fuel. The state is subsidizing to the tune of 4 cedis, 11 pesos a liter. So should prices go further on the world market, the Ghanaian state will have to look at internal rearrangement in order not to affect the fiscal, even if it means reducing some of the levies to temporarily pushing Ghanaians. This has happened in the past. It happened under various regimes, especially under Thanos and the Mahama one. It's happened that any time prices go way out of a certain range, there are internal mechanisms to cushion the consumer to some extent. But I am confident in the resilience of the Ghanaian economy, particularly on the performance of the CD, because that is a major impactor on fuel prices at the pump level.
Okay.
And so, yes, the geopolitical happening is unfortunate. It will create its own upheaval, but we are in a better position because we have a stronger economy today to manage the ripple than it would have been 9 months back.
So if I understand you, there's no need for us to panic.
No, there's no need to panic. There's need for concern, and the two are not necessarily the same. Somebody was arguing yesterday that we are an export of crude. Yes, but the government take in our export is far lower than what our imports, and therefore we are not going to get the advantage of high price significantly. And even the issue of Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is in a better position to get to reap some reward from today's pricing because of the Dangote refinery. Nigeria is no longer importing as much as it used to. Previously, even though Nigeria was an exporter of food, imported far more, and therefore the dynamic was different. For Ghana, it just also means the controllers of our economy to look at efficiency, driving up efficiency in the petroleum supply chain by reducing costs. There are some costs that should be reviewing down, especially on some of their demand. And so I believe the Ministries of Finance and Energy have a handle on this.
Okay. Earlier this week, COPEG was advising that government should start stocking so that we don't get to enjoy the negative impact of this so much. Do you agree that we should start stocking as this war rages?
Well, it raises an issue. One of the major functions, of course, is to keep strategic stocks. Do we have strategic stocks today? No. Technically, we don't. We have operational stocks. And that is because we have seen a number of years refuse to fund strategic stocks. If you look at the price build-up, the strategic stock levy, which used to be there, has been zeroed out. And therefore, there is a need to build up our strategic stocks from public finance. And therefore, when prices start coming down again, I believe it will be time to reintroduce the strategic stock levy when prices start coming down. Because as a nation, we have enough storage capacity to keep strategic stocks of between 3 to 5 weeks. We have the tankage, but we don't have the product. And strategic stocks in most jurisdictions are publicly funded.
Well, so your argument is that because it's publicly funded, maybe we should look at how we can have that particular levy to take care of this kind of strategic stocks when there is need be, right?
Yes, we can. We should be doing that, and that should not necessarily lead to an increase in price at the form head. We can generate administrative efficiency in the price build-up to introduce a strategic stock levy of, let's say, 20 pesos a liter through efficiency gains in the price build-up. I have always been worried about the inefficiencies in the price build-up. If you take the UPPF, if you take the private distribution margin, indeed, since the cost of fuel went down and fuel is the major operational cost in transportation, UPPF has not been revised downwards. The private distribution margin has not been revised downwards to account for the reduced operational cost. So within those two, it should be possible to carve out a strategic stock levy to bolster the reserves of this country to face future certainty.
Doc, you said that you have confidence in the performance of the cedi, and we should not panic, although we can be concerned. I think that the war is set to continue because it doesn't look like Iran and Israel are coming to the table anytime soon. With that in mind, are you confident that fuel prices, especially at the pump, will remain at the same price we're seeing right now? Or could it be going up?
No, I mean, in the next window, fuel prices may just go up a little in the next window. And I don't also see the Israeli-Iranian war going on for beyond a month. I don't see that. It's unlike Ukraine, Russia. It is in the strategic interest of global powers to make sure that this war is going to end very soon. It can't go on for a month. It can't go on for a month. But the next window is likely to experience the ripple effect. And that should not be significantly much.
Okay.
I mean, what if it does? What if it does go on for over a month? Will we be more exposed than we are right now? Should we then start panicking?
No, I believe in the ability of the managers of the economy to manage this situation. The cooperation between the Ministries of Finance and Energy and the players, COPEC and other buyers, we can ride this storm. It's a temporary storm, almost a storm in a teacup, yes, but it will escalate. No, I don't foresee this war going beyond a month. If you study geopolitics, if you study global strategy, security strategy, this war will not go beyond a month. The ripples may go beyond, but the actual fighting, I sincerely believe within the next 2 weeks, particularly if you consider that the IDF now have air superiority over the airspace of Iran. This war will come to us. It is the interest of the world. It's in the interest of the Arab, the interest of Israel, everybody's interest to bring to a conclusion sooner than later. I don't foresee this going beyond a month.
Okay. Dr. Kwabena Donkor is former Minister for Power, and he joins us for this conversation. Thank you so much, Doc. And it's a good time to bring in Nana Yaw Muriku. He's an international relations expert, and he joins us also for more details and clarity. I want to start from exactly where the former minister ended, saying he doesn't see the war going for over a month. Yesterday on PM Express, the Israeli ambassador said, if the Iranians are willing to come to the table with a serious intention to end their terror activities, then we have no problem. Meanwhile, Iranians have hinted at willingness to return to nuclear talks if the U.S. stays out, while Israel remains firm on military objectives. Does that sound like something that they're concluding on immediately? You are the expert.
Once again,
it's
always a privilege to be here. Well, I think that I would not throw caution to the wind and say that the war will be concluded in a week or two or put a timeline to it. When the Russo-Ukraine war started, we thought it was going to end because Ukraine didn't have the military superpower, the superiority to withstand Russia's, military might. But we've seen where this is going. I understand that the stakes involved in this conflict is very high. And so people are likely to think that, considering that Iran is at a disadvantage, they are likely to kowtow to the demands of Israel.
That's of Ukraine.
That's what I'm saying. So for me, I'll be very cautious to say that the war is coming to an end in a week or two, because there's a lot of calculations involved here, right? Now, Iran has realized that this is not only about nuclear destruction or destruction of missiles, but it's ultimately about regime change. And you've seen how the Iranian population, even though they find their government unpopular, has rallied behind, the current Iranian regime, because they see this as an aggressive attack on their very survival. And so even the popularity, the unpopularity that the Iranian citizenry show to the Iranian government is taking a different turn. Now they are rallying behind the government. And so there is that attrition, there is that endurance or wavelength of the Iranian citizenry to see this through and through. And so I do not think that I want to put a week or two, as to how quick this war will be concluded. But let's see how things are manifesting.
No, but that your question about whether you see some hope in the posture of both Iran and Israel, that there could be a truce in the coming days.
Look, let me say this. It was very difficult for Iran to negotiate on nuclear proliferation when the sanctions were imposed on them. For me, I think that window is closing, especially now that a full war has been launched on Iran. So the idea of the Trump administration was to use coercive diplomacy, right? To try to use a carrot and stick approach, but ultimately to crack the whip when the need, arose. But for me, I see that gap closing. I see that gap, narrowing by and large, especially now that you want to land a full war on the Iranian regime. Like I said, it was much less difficult for them to negotiate when even the sanctions and the JCPOA was implemented. Much less now that you are launching a full war on the Iranian regime. So I don't think, I think it's, President Trump would love, Israel would love that this will bring the Iranians to their knees. But the Iranian regime has something to show, because right now, if they go to the negotiation table, they might appear seem as very weak. At the same time, if they don't go to the negotiation table, it is true that if you compare Iranian regime's capacity and that of Israel, the IDF seems to be overpowering, the Iranians in terms of, traditional, battle strategy. But we see that the Israelis have solid, airspace defense system. Not so for the Iranians. So we've seen the number of missiles that Israelis have launched into the Iranian airspace as compared to how much the Iranians have launched into the Israel airspace. So I think that there's a lot of calculations. The Israelis, they are dependent on two main defense systems from the Americans, what you call the Patriot system. The other one is called THAAD. THAAD is the Terminal Altitude Area Defense System. They have the they have the Arrow 1 and 2, and then they have the David, how do you call it, sling. But regardless of all these systems, we have seen, and even the support they are having from Jordan, because Jordan is preventing Iranians missiles from penetrating to Israel. But regardless of all these solid structures, yesterday when I listened to, I think yesterday, Ivan's interview with
the Israeli ambassador.
I really enjoyed it through and through. He had to attest to the fact that regardless of their solid impenetrable system, the Iranian missiles are pounding through Israel, and some of them are landing into Israelis domain. So that means what it means is that Iran has some catastrophic ability if this war should go on for a long time. So I think as much as the Israelis will want the Iranians to come around the table, I mean, it's a two-way thing.
But the Iranians have also said, well, we will if big man Trump is out, and if Israel shows that commitment that, well, we want to stay on our military. So that's why Suti wanted to find out. Does that put those two postures? Israel says, if Iran is willing to come to the table, yeah, we'll also come. Then Iran says, if big man Trump will stay out. So do you see something coming?
You know what is happening? There are 3 main nuclear sites in Iran that have gotten to that 60% level, capable of producing nuclear weapons. 2 of them have been taken out. The one that has what they call a cascade of very advanced nuclear cells likely to carry nuclear warheads, I've forgotten the name, but that is one that is deeply embedded into the earth. I think is 90,000 feet down the earth. And that is what the Iranians are targeting. I mean, the Israelis are targeting. But unfortunately, the Israelis do not have the firepower to attack that nuclear site. And they are betting their hope that they can draw the Americans into it, because the Americans...
It is buried what?
Underground, deep in the earth.
How many, you mentioned
90,000 feet, or it's very deep. Yes, I'm not so sure of the figure, but it's very, very deep.
Wow.
And regardless of the technological advancement of the IDF, they are unable to target that, and they are betting their hope that the Americans come in. And that is why people are saying that Donald Trump immediately left the G7 meeting to go to the Situation Room, have a discussion with the Pentagon as to whether where it has gotten to, the Americans need to step in or not. All the while, the American is providing what you call defensive strategies to Israel, not offensive. They are not taking part in the attacks. Solely defensive. Like I'm saying, they are the ones providing the Israelis, the IDF with the Patriot system and the TASS system. But right now, it has gotten to the point that Benjamin Netanyahu is betting his hopes that the Americans will directly get involved. And that is what the Iranians are saying, that the moment the Americans get involved, they know that it is getting to that point where things are becoming very critical, because the America's military might.
Kofi Eje, you have some thoughts?
I actually want us to look at the voting that went on the 12th.
Right.
On Thursday, right?
Right.
And then we are talking about America, but how about Iran? The ability to continue this war in that long term, where during the voting, there were 3 countries that decided to stay with Iran. Talk about Russia, China, and our own Burkina Faso. We are talking about America offering Israel that defensive power. How about Russia and China also coming in to offer the same help? Don't you think that this will actually prolong the war, maybe longer than what Dr. Kobina Dufo is?
That's a very interesting. That is why I say that I would rather be careful to put in a timeline to this crisis. You and I know in the Russo-Ukraine war that is going right now, Russia is getting solid support from North Korea. Soldiers have been provided on the ground from North Korea, and that is giving, there are some transfer of weapon system from other countries. Probably China, probably North Korea to Russia, and it's bolstering Russia's military capacity. It won't come to me as a surprise if there is some indirect support from these countries, that be maybe China, maybe Russia. It might not be overtly done, but these are military alliances, these are military corporations, and they do understand themselves, And this talks about how there is a recession in what you call the international liberal order, which has been for a long time led by the United States. But countries are bandwagoning, and becoming around them, and also gaining some kind of, leverage. So it won't come to me as a surprise. And remember, Iran has proxies. It is true that Hamas in Gaza has been weakened. It is true that Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has been weakened. It's only probably the Houthis in Yemen. It is true that Iranian proxy in Syria has also been seriously compromised. But you can never underestimate these Iranians. There is a way they can pull serious shocks, and that is why the Americans are getting all their citizens, evacuating all their citizens out of Iran. They can strike very strategic Western interests in the Middle East. In fact, there are experts that are saying that Iranians have, terrorist cells across Western Europe, even across US that they can trigger. Not necessarily targeting US or Western interests in the Middle East, but even going to some of these, because you see, that is the global, chess game. Can you imagine how Israel was able to strike in the heart of Iran? Because they have serious intelligence officers operating.
Yes.
It stops. There is nothing that is stopping the Iranians from also having equal solid intelligence bases unknown, in these areas. So I think that we have to, and that is why I think the United States, look, Trump is, I always say you must give him his props. Trump comes across as very unassuming. Do you know that he is using one stone to kill two birds at this moment?
Exactly.
No.
He is saying that U.S. is not embarking on what you call the offensive, but it also inures to Trump's interest to ensure. He will be happy to use Israel to wing Iran's nuclear.
Leaves the negotiation.
Exactly. He is happy to see what is going on. He doesn't want to get involved. But hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
Yeah.
If Israel is able to wing these nuclear development capacities of Iran, it inures to the interest of United States. Without
so that's straightforward. Do you think Trump being Trump, and the analysis you've just given, do you think this Iranian caveat will actually see the day of light? That the U.S. will get out so that they can go to the talks, the tables, and talk about how they end this?
Can you take that again?
Do you think Trump being Trump and the interest, the two games he's playing, and the Iranians saying that unless the U.S. exits the talks, they will not come to the table and talk about peace with Israel? Do you think Trump being Trump will actually leave them alone? Will he stay out of this?
No, I don't think. Trump is seeking to mediate this whole idea.
So he's nowhere near getting out of this.
So he's not getting U.S. military assets directly on the offensive, but he would like to be in charge of negotiation. And of course, you can't get U.S. out because if Israel will listen to anybody, it has to be United States.
Yeah.
So then what are the Iranians asking for? If they know that Trump won't get out,
they are not asking for him to get out, but
the U.S. to leave the negotiation so that they go to the table themselves.
No,
correct me if I'm wrong.
So it's a condition that the Iranians have set that the only thing that will get us to the table is for U.S. Not to be part of this
and not get involved.
Exactly. But now that Trump, we understand, has led his people into the Situation Room, is it not to say that we will not get out of the
Can't get out.
We are unaware as to what is happening in the Pentagon, right? We are only speculating that if it is just monitoring, he could have done that from Canada, where the G7. But once you've left the G7 summit to come to the Pentagon, that means that there is something that is significant. Maybe they are just deploying their military assets to ensure that if anything hits their target, they are in a position to respond. None is really getting involved. But I'm telling you, Benjamin Netanyahu is betting his hope that U.S. gets involved because that is his ultimate. He will be.
See, that's the point I was leading to. So the Iranians know that there's no way Trump will easily get out of these conversations.
Right.
And so then, what are they looking for?
Right.
Where is this going?
Right. Well, I think that let's see. Right. Let's see that because right now it is not, like I said, it's not only about destroying the nuclear capabilities of Iran or the ballistic. In my opinion, I think that the political byproduct of what is likely to engender is that the Iranian regime becomes very unpopular, that it will trigger the popular will against them. So ultimately, without because you understand that Netanyahu said that President Trump kicked the idea off that they should assassinate the Iranian political figure. So what better way than the people to rise against the people, the Iranian regime, than for Israel to initiate it?
But that, from your analysis, is not being achieved because, like you said, the people are now rallying behind the authorities.
And it will be very unpopular, right, to, in this current political dispensation, to want to initiate a regime change. That is why other political actors in Israel are trying to downplay what Netanyahu. Yesterday, when the Israeli ambassador was here, you see how he was able to strategically avoid that question of regime change because then it makes Israel very unpopular, and so they are trying to downplay that particular issue. If it comes from the popular will of the people, if the people are saying that, look, we are unhappy of what you are doing because of the damage is visiting on us, then hooray.
But do you remember the Osama bin Laden situation? When it was Obama, right? When he went to the Situation Room, then they were able to say, okay, give the order for the guy to be executed. We are speculating though, but if you look at the past experiences, can't we then say that in the next few hours, we should be expecting a major U.S. intervention in this whole thing?
You know what? You see, Trump is doing so many things that appear to be an antithesis of what he promised. And right now, in the midterm election coming up in November, Trump is being very, very careful because there is a solid MAGA base that is not happy with U.S.'s involvement in the Middle East. Because you, Trump, came to power on the argument that you are going to take U.S. away from most of these wars. You don't want to be seen in entangling in these wars and making it more than your predecessor. So it's in news to you. Trump is very much aware of these calculations. And we have seen how regime change has been very unpopular, and it has deteriorated. You saw what has happened in Libya. Libya is no better than it was during Gaddafi's time. So regime change have never been done very well, and they have not. You go in with a plan, but as to how sustainable the aftermath of your attack will be and the political stability to create is always uncertain. And so the Americans are very aware of directly getting involved in a regime change, issue. Where I said right now, I can only speculate that U.S. will indeed deploy its military assets, protecting what they claim to be its interest in that area.
Okay.
But as to whether immediately they want to get involved, I just want to be cautious and see, what happens. Which is what, Netanyahu is betting against.
I think we should actually look at the snowballing effect, where just this morning there are reports that even Palestine has been hit by about 80 missiles, where we are looking at Israel and Iran currently. But we know this is a region that is very sensitive, and you could get allies and other countries involved so quickly that will affect global trade and the infamous, canal that we know. And we know that there is that possibility.
I think they call it the Strait of Hormuz.
Exactly, that's strait. Now we are just talking about two countries. And on the geopolitical side, we're not seeing that there is the American side and there's also the Russia-China side. What is going to be that snowballing impact, and would that actually elongate this war?
Well, I think I'll come back to the question. I'll come back to the answer that there's a lot of uncertainties going on at this particular moment. We would have to wait a few days to see, because Iran has allies, like you said. Maybe at some point, Russia might want to step in through veto of some of these actions. It might be through deployment of some weaponry systems, some ammunitions. In fact, Iran can also have some effects on this Strait of Hormuz that you are talking about. They can decide to manipulate that area as a card, that they will play in the crisis. And so once again, for me, I want to be cautiously optimistic, that this war or this crisis is coming to an end in some few days. But rather, my biggest issue here is the U.S. Once the U.S.
I don't cut you, but I'm just reading from Al Jazeera that an Iranian lawmaker says Tehran is considering closing the waterway.
The Strait of Hormuz
was most important.
That's what I'm saying. Just the same way, the Houthis were able to exploit that area, that stretch of transport, area to their advantage. Iran could also, do that. And now it is very, very desperate. Iran is very, very, very desperate because Israel is achieving almost 70 to 80% of what it sought to do. It is taking out a whole echelon of the Iranian Revolutionary Armed Forces Guard. It has taken out their defense system. It has taken out nuclear scientists. Those that were replaced in some few days some of them have been assassinated. And so it is doing to Hezbollah, it is doing to the Iranian regime how it attacked Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And so the Iranians are in a very, tight space. This is a preemptive strike. This is what you call premeditated strike in international law. Some other people would have, and yesterday I liked the question that Evans asked the ambassador. This is a preemptive strike. Ordinarily you would wish for somebody to attack you before you attack them. But international law gives a caveat. If you look at Article 51 of the UN Charter, it tells you that even though the UN says don't use force, when somebody attacks you, you attack them. Except that the United Nations system did not define what constitutes an attack. So if I see that you are arming yourself to attack me, can I strike first, or I should wait for you to strike? But there are a number of scenarios that speak to the heart that preemptive strike or premeditated strike are permissible in some instances, in international law.
And the Israelis say this is coming after years of warning of that nuclear weapon development that they suspect Iran will be building.
In fact, the first time they suspected this was in 2000. That is when this Iranian nuclear capability came out, and that they were really, really arming themselves to producing a nuclear weapon. And Iran says that, look, we are doing this not to create nuclear weapons. That is what they are saying, but to have a trump card on the table. Because people are saying there's this speculation that Israel even has nuclear weapons, but nobody is pushing Israel to declare whether it has it or not. But why are you?
This war has shown that both of them have nuclear weapons.
Well, Israel hasn't come out together. It's a speculation. I mean, for me, I would believe that Israel. I want to believe that Israel's military sophistication and its relationship with U.S. I would want to believe that they have some nuclear. I mean, this is just a speculation.
Gentlemen, while we are wrapping up to go, I just want you to enlighten me briefly the role of proxy groups, because you keep hearing about Hezbollah and the rest. Yeah. How are they playing in maybe expanding this war? I mean, it's not just about them now at this point, is it?
No. But ultimately, I think that these groups are weakened as they used to be. They might be able to make some impact. And that is why Donald Trump really was not in favor of what you call the JCPO, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Because according to him, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action only targeted Iran's nuclear capability without targeting its support for proxy and destabilizing the Middle East region. And that is why he was against it. And that is why Israel and US have been fighting to ensure that don't only attack Iran, but look at Hezbollah, look at the Houthis, look at what you call the Palestinians, Islamist Jihad, PIJs. Look at all those Iranian proxy and then attack them before you go to Iran. And Israel has realized that Iran is at its weakest moment. Now that these proxies are on their knees, there was no better time to strike than now.
Well, many have said that when you see your proxies coming down, it's a clear indication that you yourself prepare.
We have one in our local balance. Or something.
And I even want to say, although we have to go,
are
we right to say Zulfi Asema this time? Because Ghana have said
my goodness, that one is an issue for another day. Look, I keep saying that Nkrumah said we look neither to the east nor to the west. We look forward. Ghana's foreign policy has always been one of non-alignment. And I think that Ghana has a national sovereignty. We have our national interest. If we think that the safest way to go is to be non-aligned, I think that is the right thing to do. And I think that the government was spot on. We cannot be pressured by any other state to do what we don't want to do. We didn't say yes or no. We didn't say yes or no.
That way. Thank you so much for coming. It's too short a time.
Exactly.
Give us more time next time. And I'm Reku is an international relations expert, and he joins us for this conversation. Of course, our man, our lead data researcher and data analyst, Isaac Kofi Adjei, was also here with us. And we spoke to former Minister of Power, Dr. Kwabena Donkor. And that's how we're wrapping up this belt of conversation. But the gentleman...